Well, hello there. I am Coach Dana Spencer, and I have the privilege of having alongside of me game changer alumni Dar Mayweather, PhD. Y'all see that? Go ahead and show him some love for having that PhD at the end of his name. Dar, how you feeling? What's going on with you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. What's going on with me is, I had a really good holiday. We spent some time in Vegas, so for my anniversary, 7 years. And just
Congratulations.
thank you. It's been a great year. A lot of things to celebrate. Got my PhD in April. Um, just celebrating life. Launched a book, an ebook on inclusive leadership training, and that has gone really well. I got folks who are committed to doing multiple trainings this fall, and so I feel really good, especially amongst everything that's happening in the world, right? With Supreme Court and all that good stuff. So yeah.
Mm. Well, tell us about this PhD. We'll start there and then we'll go over to the ebook.
Yeah. It's not much to say. Honestly, it's an honor and a privilege to be an academic. I've been teaching at the college and university setting for over 10 years before I even pursued a PhD. And I knew it was something that I wanted to do because honestly, it transformed me taking on the responsibility of transforming students.
Mm.
And I didn't know that, of course, diversity was going to be the thing for me, diversity and inclusion work. But because it was the thing that I ran from actually in undergrad, and even my master's program, I was like, I don't want to be pigeonholed as the diversity Black guy. And
Mm.
lo and behold, I volunteered to teach a diversity course to resident assistants as a hall director in one of my first years of my professional job after master's. And the transformation in the students was amazing. And it pushed me to transform myself into a better leader. I realized that I wasn't as knowledgeable in these things as I thought I was. I thought just because I'm Black, right, that makes me knowledgeable. And being Black is just one identity, right? I'm also a man. I'm also a husband. I'm also a father. I'm also educated. I'm also from poor socioeconomic status, but I live middle class now, right? I heterosexual. I am cisgender, right? These other identities that I hold that I had no idea about. And doing work with students really helped me do work on myself, to help me kind of break the generational curses of my father seeing things, of doing things with my mother that children shouldn't see, right? And um, being able to understand how that impacted my identity as a father, right? Um, Not seeing my mom be in a healthy relationship, and seeing what that's like. How do I break that generational curse being a husband? These are all things that diversity work and inclusion work have helped me be better at, right? And I'm sitting here celebrating 7 years, and my children have never lived in an apartment, and they've always had two parents in their home, and these are all things that I'm thankful for. It's a blessing, but also takes work.
Yes. Oh my
So the
goodness. You
PhD is a combination of understanding who you are really in the world, essentially.
yes. And what I'm hearing is that only 15, only 15% of people are self-aware.
You know, yeah. I think we overestimate what it means to really be self-aware.
Mm.
Like, it's one thing to know yourself. It's another thing to be able to explain that to people in a way that is lame as terms, right? Like, I know I'm gifted and talented at bringing and attracting people to me, right? I know I'm gifted and talented at speaking and influencing people and inspiring people. And so, what does that really mean, right? That means that I'm good at this. That means I'm not good at some other things.
Okay.
And when we realize what we're great at, and this is as a professor, right? I teach leadership. I believe that you get farther focusing on your strengths than you do your weaknesses. But what we are taught is that um, you need to be what's the word? Well-rounded, as if your weaknesses need to be as good as your strengths. Right.
Mm.
And that's not the case, right? Here's an example. Do anybody want to see The Rock in a drama? Anybody want to see The Rock do a drama film and it's just all about him showing his emotions, showing his range of acting? Why
Right.
don't we see that? It's because he sticks to his strengths: action comedy, romantic action comedy, right? Like that's his lane. He stays in it. Many people are so we look at self-awareness as being well-rounded. So I need to be in many lanes, when the reality is you only got really one or two lanes and you should just
Right.
do those things.
So why do you feel like it's so, because what I am, with dealing with behavioral assessments and understanding myself and understanding other people and recognizing that, we've been lying to ourselves for a long time and not really thinking that we're lying, but there's underlying reasons as to why we say things. So let me give you an example. For years, I would say, I hate to read. I hate to read. I hate to read. I hate to read. But the older that I got, I realized I don't like people telling me what to do. So when I'm in college and I have to read these 3 books that you tell me I have to read, and I know that there's only going to be an exam and you're only going to ask me a couple of questions from those books, I'm not reading those books. So just understanding that. So why do you feel like it is harder for people to be honest with themselves in order to get to the truth? Because if you're not going to be honest with yourself about how you're feeling or whatever, then you can't get to the truth. So why is it so hard?
That's a hard question for me to answer. I can't say that I know why. Human behaviors change is hard for everybody. Think about like addiction services, right? Or any addiction, right? It doesn't matter if it's a drug or some food or going to a casino or whatever it is, right? There's reasons why people have to be in process and community to deal with these type of issues, is because you can't do a lot of things alone in the
Mm,
world in general, right? And so oftentimes I think when it comes to changing our behaviors, we're thinking that we can do it by ourselves.
mm,
And we are not seeking help. We're not seeking support. We're not seeking support from people who have been through on the journey, right? We believe oftentimes that, and this is also in our shame and in our own blame and in our own guilt that we put on ourselves, that we're the only person experiencing this.
mm,
And the reality is that's not the case. There's probably more people than you know, but when we are not vulnerable enough to say, I have this problem, we don't
mm,
get the support, right? And so you think about any addiction rehabilitative services or support, the first step is acknowledging that you have a problem. And it's not to yourself, it's to somebody else, right?
mm.
And if you want to do something about that, you acknowledge that to somebody that's going to hold you accountable. And people don't like that.
Yeah,
Right?
that part.
Like, like, oh, I want to drink, but in order for me to drink, I got to tell my partner, and my partner is going to tell me no, because these are the parameters that I put on these, drinking alcohol or whatever. And so instead of telling my partner, I feel shame that I even feel like I need to drink.
Mm,
When the reality is, you're not going to get rid of the feeling. You can do something about the feeling. You see, that makes sense, right? And
yeah.
so, I think it comes down to people being courageous enough to really say, like, hey, I'm trying to change. I want to grow. I want to be better. I want to do this. and actually doing something about it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you can say you want $1 million all you want, but if you don't actually do stuff to make $1 million,
Hmm.
it's what a dream is just an idea. I mean, an idea is just a dream that you put on paper. I mean, that you said out loud, right? You need to do something in action, right? Write it down. When you write it down, pursue it, research it, look it up, look at the people who are doing it the best. Who did
Mm.
they learn from? What are they doing to make it seem like they're awesome at that thing? How can I mimic them? How can I be Kobe to that Jordan? Right? Like that's how I look at it. And that's the most practical way I can look at it, as a way to like start yourself, right? If you are not in a place where you feel like you want to actually have a conversation with somebody to do something about it, and you like, I just want to do it myself, then just look at the best and do what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, that. Yeah. Thank you for simplifying that. We're making a lot of things more complicated than they have to be. So, and I want to go back when you were talking about relationships, because, that's a lot about, investing in real estate is a lot about building relationships. But when you were
Mm.
talking about the relationships between, your parents, and then it sounds like, so was your dad in the home?
He was for a few years. They got married after I was born, and then marriage lasted for a few years, and then it was over. And went off, and I lived with mom for the rest of my young adult life and all those things.
Okay, so you said that we were celebrating 7 years, and with your children who were able to see you in a healthy relationship with their mom. So a lot of times we say that we can't do what we haven't seen because we
Mm.
need that example. How were you able to, not having seen the example, decide, you know what? And I think you said it a little bit, of wanting to break the generational curse. How were you able to overcome what you didn't even see?
Ooh, um, there's two routes I want to take with this. Sorry, my son is right here. You want to say hello?
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Good. Good to see you.
You gonna let me finish my conversation with Miss Dana? Later after dinner, yes. All right, thank you. Um, hey, we live, so this is
Yeah, yeah,
yo. Um, but I could take this a couple routes, right? So I want to take this first, the personal route, for me, like what that means for me. And so I think for the longest time, I lived a life that I was very disciplined about making sure I didn't do the things that I saw that negative impacted my family. Right. So I made sure I didn't have no kids in high school, because I saw my family have kids in high school, and that was hard. Right. I didn't want to drop out from college because I seen what that did to my family, people who dropped out from college. Right. I didn't want to work in a factory because I saw what that did for people who worked in my family. Right. Um, and at some point in my life, I realized that I lived a life of making decisions based off of what I didn't want to do versus what I did want to do. And that was the shift, because I felt stuck. At some point, I had made all these decisions based off of what other people did do, not what I wanted to do. And once I kind of realized this, I had realized, like, I had created, I by this time I graduated a master's degree. By this time I'm in a relationship that's kind of serious, getting serious, right? Um, and I'm in my 30s, and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do from here. Right? Like, I don't know. Right? I got this whole degree. I got a good career. I got a good job. I was working at the University of Michigan, top tier institution, right, in the country. I was, having a lot of opportunities to develop as a young professional, creating curriculum for in-class experiences as a hall director, right? I'm literally creating classes for the University of Michigan as a resident hall director. And so I'm like, maybe this is my calling. Maybe this is what I want to do. Maybe I want to teach. Maybe I want to teach. Okay, so how do I do that? And everybody's like, you got to get a PhD. I'm like, I ain't doing that. So,
like, once again, that's what I'm not going to do.
Not going to do that. Not doing that. And so what I did do was I took on as many opportunities as I can to develop an ability to create messaging and opportunities for learning. And so I started speaking. Right. And I started speaking, one, because I was invited to talk at a school, and a kid came after, and was like, he had to be maybe 7th, 8th grade, maybe 6th, 7th, 8th grade, middle school. And he talked about how he was microaggressed in the classroom. And I was like, did anybody do anything? And he's like, nobody did anything. And so now he has to go into the classroom that he's been microaggressed in for the rest of the school year, right? And if he fails, they're going to blame him. Not the support, not the master's, bachelor's, PhD level people, professionals that work in this school that literally have no ability to support him. And so I started speaking. I was like, all right, I'm going to start sharing my message, talking about being a young Black man, talking about what I experienced as a young Black man. And it turned into me educating. Now I'm going to start talking about race and talking about being Black, talk about racial identity, racial awareness, talk about racial justice. And before I knew it, I was being hired for a coordinator for multicultural affairs, running the Center for Race and Ethnicity at another institution. And that work just continued on. And I'm like, dang, I'm getting more and more opportunities to speak, but I still want to teach. So I applied for the PhD program, got in, and that's when I started in 2016 and finished it in 2023, right? And so I say that to say one reason is people think about all the time what they don't want. And they never take time to think about what it is that you actually want to do, right? And so that's one way that I think one reason why people don't really think about what's their next. I think the next reason, right? So the other side of things is people fear what they don't know. When you are really pursuing something different, you have to do things in a way that you've never learned, right? And so I learned that women are independent, women are powerful, women are amazing, women are able to do all the things to raise a family without a man. That's what I learned. And so what did I bring into my relationship? The idea that my wife should be able to do everything, even though I am present. Why can't you do it? I saw my mama do this, right? And what it was really my fear of changing the mindset that I learned, because I learned how to be in relationships from somebody who was single.
Now you got me thinking about my son.
So, and this is just my story, right? But I had to now. So now I'm like, I'm in year 2 or 3 of my marriage. It could be better. Right? I could be better. And I'm like, it's clearly I need to do something different, because what I'm doing is not working. Right? It's not working. And so started going to therapy. Never had anybody say, hey, go to therapy to learn about yourself, to learn how you can be of service in your marriage. Never seen
Mm,
it, right. One thing is to talk about therapy because you crave, or you got stuff going on, mental wellness issues, right? Like that's what I thought. But nah, I had to get pushed to go to therapy to really address deep-seated issues that was within me, that was showing up in my marriage, and
mm,
it was negatively impacting my marriage. And so I had to do something that I never seen anybody do, right? Um, Also, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of healthy marriages in my life. And so I had to lean on my peers, right?
mm,
My people who are my age, who are married. And we had to create a support system for each other because it gets real, right? And if you don't have somebody holding you accountable, you can make decisions that's out of your own personal interest and not the interest of your family.
mhm,
And so having a sounding board for of people who are married, who are able to give me healthy relationship advice, um, I think is also critical to that. And so, yeah, but you got to know where you get where you learn relationships from. So that's what I'm saying, right? Like know where you learn relationships, right? And that's how you build relationships. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about business, we're talking about personal, talking about professional. It all bleeds into each other. And
mm.
so, my inability to be vulnerable in my personal relationships is also was connected to my inability to be vulnerable in my business relationships, right?
Mhm,
And whereas I was thinking that I need to show up perfect,
mm,
right? Once I learned how to be more vulnerable with my wife, I learned how to be more vulnerable with my clients and my following, which brought more people to me, right? Because I'm just sharing that I'm human and I'm overcoming these things that they may think is impossible, unfathomable, right? But
So
here I
how were
am.
you able to make that transition? Because you went from saying, "Oh, I know I don't want that. I know I don't want that. Oh, I don't want that. Oh, I know I don't want that." And I think a lot of people right now don't know what they want to do when they grow up, right? Because
Yep.
of that. So how are you able to really understand, oh, no, this is what Dar wants to do. Dar wants to teach. How are you able to figure that out?
Um, Man, this is it's one, you got to be able to listen to the God-given signs that God sends you through people, right? The messages that God is sending you through people. So um I had multiple ventures, right? I tried multiple things. I applied to multiple industry jobs and never got nothing. So I could say, oh, this is just the worst. Like nobody wants me. Or I can say, this is where I belong. My work here is
Mm,
not done. I need to, I need to capitalize more on what I have now and appreciate what I got versus focusing and thinking that the grass is greener on the other side.
mm,
Right. That was for me. So I wasn't afraid to, and I had the time, right? So I was single, I didn't have no kids. uh, I could go out and try. I brewed beer, right? And sold beer, right? Like I did that. I tried it. I was like, all right, this is good, but it wasn't for me. I tried other things. I created I had a whole music label, right? I thought I was going to be a music industry executive, right? And that fell through. And it was not work. It just wasn't working. Um, it was other things. I tried to apply for, um I mean, I even applied to be like in the restaurant industry. Like I was trying to like work in breweries. Nobody would hire me. I'm like, right? Like I'm, and of course, like these are just small examples, but oftentimes we just don't listen. We just being
Mm.
hard headed. Right? So I had to stop being hard headed on my own life. I was stifling myself. Um, I think the next thing for me, again, like I'm not afraid to put myself out there, and I think that's the difference between me and a lot of other people. But once I saw somebody doing something that I thought I could do,
Mm.
I went for it. And so, you know, uh, Eric Thomas, right? Let's just be real. I saw him on YouTube speaking, and I'm like, yo, this dude's passionate, right? And for years, I just listened, and here just and people don't realize like sometimes mindset change takes years, especially when you're doing
Mm.
it guided. And so if you want to change your life, first you got to change your mind. And if you're not working alongside a coach, somebody who's an expert at helping you really see this mindset change that you need to make, it's going to take some time. So yeah, I started watching YouTube with Eric Thomas and I saw him speak and I'm like, yo, I can do this. I'm teaching. I'm a hall director and my students feel inspired by me. I could do this, right? And so I went for 4 or 5 years just doing it whenever I could. And then I got to 2016 and I was like, all right, it's time to start a business, right? So I was like, because I watched The Breakfast Club and I watched Gary Vee on The Breakfast Club. And he was like, man, if you're passionate, you can start a business on anything. And I was like, nah, like my wife sent it to me. She was like, "Yo, like this dude kind of, I feel like he's saying some things that I feel like I heard you say, right?" Like, and so I ended up reading this book. Dang, what's the Crushing It? I want to say Crush It or You Crushed It or something like that. And literally, he was just talking about starting a business from a lens of just being happy, right?
Mm.
From a lens of just being of service to people, right? Of just helping people, right? Like he just talked about, he was like, yo, in the next book, he called it, it's jab, 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 hook. He talked about how you just give away free, 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 and then you ask for them to pay. And that's so much easier than being like, hey, you should pay for this. This is the benefits, all the stuff. It's like, no, just give them the benefits and then they'll pay. And so I was like, dang. So I ended up starting a business and I was like, I'm going to speak because I want to help educators create space where children of color feel wanted, valued, and needed.
Mm.
Right. That brought me joy. That just made me feel like I had purpose. Right. It made me feel like I had a future in something. And so I just pursued it and I pursued it hard. Like I'm not the type of person that's going to half do something if I'm doing it. And if I'm half doing it, I'm mature enough to know that I need to let it go. Right. When I pursued this teaching speaking thing, when I tell you anytime somebody asked me to speak free, $5 a coffee mug, it didn't matter. I'm in there. Oh, I was in there, right? I wasn't charging people. I wasn't charging people for years. And then I had a child, right? And then, we wanted to buy a house. And then we wanted to start establishing retirement. And, then family started needing support. And then I'm like, yo, I can't do free no more.
Mm.
And the business was it, right? Let me make it official. And I went hard. I learned about I learned more about business than I did about speaking. So shout out
Mm.
to Game Changers, right? Because that's when things changed for me. Um, I was not doing well in my speaking career, right? After the pandemic, things dried up. And so I was like, I'm going to take one more shot at this. I got some training, and now I'm doing better than ever.
And so what does that when you were talking about, your love for the the child who, doesn't feel wanted and his teacher isn't, listening to him. So we know that kind of thing happens, but in order to come from a place of servantship to help teachers, do you approach it with, a global aspect? Let me just go in here because your numbers, your scores are bad, so we're assuming that you're not treating everybody the same. Like, how do you even approach that topic, right? Because it's very sensitive, because now, it's almost like you're saying, oh, you're treating certain children certain ways. So what does that conversation look like? How do you approach that?
Yeah. So for me, it's not about me approaching people and trying to change their hearts. It's about people seeing that they want to change based on the systems, institutions, structures that they come from. Right. And so people come from structures that are homophobic, institutions and systems that are homophobic. People come from institutions and systems and structures that are sexist, racist, ableist, right? They come from that. And so when they realize that, they realize how that shows up in their leadership of young people, of children, of people of marginalized background and identity, and they don't like how it makes them feel, seeing other people feel bad about their leadership, right? So what am I saying? I don't try to change people. People come to me because they want change. And those are two different things, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so for me, it's when you realize, like you realize there's a problem. Now you want to do something about it. Now let's talk about what was that moment for you when you realized you wasn't the leader that you thought you was, right? What was the moment that you realized you aren't the leader that you thought people would see you as? And then who are those people and what's the story behind it? Right. And so I always tell my story about how I microaggressed a supervisor. And instead of firing me, they mentored me. Right. They called me in instead of calling me out. And because of that approach, I've been able to teach and impact over 150,000 people in over 20 states in 4 countries. Right? Would I be in this position today if that person fired me? So here's what I'm trying to tell people is like, oftentimes we don't realize that if we change one person's life, that person can then impact millions.
Right.
If we show one person grace, that person can go on. So then now you are a person who has impacted millions because you impacted that one person.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like what happened was you took a situation and somebody who transformed their thought process. Oh, you know what? We see something in Dar. Let's not fire him. Let's mentor him. And this is like a light bulb moment for, I pray, all of those who are listening, as to most of the time with children. Let's just use children for example. You have the child who comes in your classroom, let's say middle school, one of my favorite age groups, 7th grade. I feel like all of the children have opportunities in the 7th grade. So 7th grader, he won't sit still, not getting good grades. And so at this point, you have an opportunity to either scold him or kick him out of class or whatever, Or you can change the lens, put on a different lens, and say, hey, little Johnny, how about staying after class and having a conversation, asking what's going on? Because 9 times out of 10, if there's a situation like maybe they're living in the van because they got evicted, right? It seems like to me there's always this bigger picture than
Yep.
what we can see. So if there's an educator that's out here who's listening and they have a room full of little Johnnies, what are like 2 or 3 tips that you would recommend that they do as they can approach this situation?
Well, one is you got to be proactive, right? So like, um, w- kids can already tell that you don't care. So when it
That
comes to
part.
addressing them, like if you've already showed that you didn't care, this conversation is null and void, right?
Mm.
And
So
so
it's still
when
true. They don't care what you know. They just care how much you care, or whatever the phrase is. They don't care
yep,
how much you know until they know that you care.
exactly right. They don't care how much you know until they know that you care, right? What James Baldwin said: a child can be taught by somebody who despises them,
Ooh, ooh,
right?
drop the mic on that one.
James Baldwin, right? So shout out to James. Um, I realize that I have mechanisms in my classroom that help me show that I care first before we get into content. Right. And so you've seen that on like Instagram or like YouTube or news or something, like where you have the teacher who like has like handshakes with every single student before they walk into the classroom, right? Or you have the teacher that gives hugs, or however she respects the boundaries of the child, but before they walk into the classroom, she shows them that I care. For me, what I do before we start content, I'll talk about, or I'll ask them, any highlight, shout-outs, announcements, or gratitude for the week, right? Those are things that you can do to show that you care and do it every day. I like to look at it like you're making deposits instead of withdrawals all the time, right? And so by the time you make a withdrawal, that withdrawal, no matter how big, won't be in the negative or won't put your account in the negative with that child,
Mm.
right? And so I would get educators to think about how are they being proactive in making deposits in children every day before they have to make that withdrawal.
Mm.
Right? So that's the first step. The second step to me is knowing your story and being able to use your story as a tool to build connections with people. Right? We are all overcomers in our own way. We have all seen and experienced things that probably people shouldn't have seen in some way, shape, or form. Right? And so, how do we show people that we use that experience as a learning opportunity to get better, to be better people? And then that's our way that we use to connect. And so, what I do with like middle school kids is I talk about um not graduating from the 8th grade, and my family, including my mother, going to celebrate my cousin because she literally went to the same school as me and was in the same grade.
Mm.
Right. And so the embarrassment and having to overcome that and become a better high school student was the charge from there. Right. I did not want to have another another graduation where my family doesn't see me walk the stage. Right. When I talk about the microaggression of boss, right? And that learn from that. I'll talk about graduating from my undergraduate degree with a bachelor's in criminal justice, going on a national search for jobs, putting in 200 applications and not getting a single interview. Right. And how that helped me see that I was clearly not focused on being a leader in the criminal justice field. I was just focused on getting a college degree, which is not
Mm.
enough to get you a job, especially
Oh,
in a recession. Right. But once I got into higher education, student affairs, my career exploded. Right, I went from a hall director to a full-time faculty member in 7 years. I was hired as the only faculty member in my department that didn't have a PhD. So, what am I saying? Know how to use your story as a tool. Right?
So to avoid, a couple of the things that we're saying to avoid um, going to college for 4 years, and once you start applying for those jobs and the Lord is shutting those doors, now realizing, oh, this isn't my calling, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. So how can we help high school students, college students to figure this out sooner before I get my degree? And same story with me. I have an accounting degree, haven't touched it. I was pregnant when my senior year in college. Praise the Lord. I didn't have to try and get an accounting job. I was like, I got to just get a job because I got this baby on the way. That was my out because I didn't want to do accounting. So how do we help our college students, our high school students to figure out what their calling is sooner so that they don't waste 4 years and then realize, oh, you know what? This ain't it.
So we can't help college, we can't help students unless we help schools.
Ooh.
Right. And so schools are responsible for creating college going students, right? Specifically high school, right? And so if we're not connected in helping schools do this work better and helping students understand their natural gifts and talents and how to articulate those to industry leaders so that they can show their value to the industry, then essentially schools are graduating students who don't know what their gifts and talents are. And then they are going to colleges and they think college is on the job training, and it's not. Right? You got to learn how to be competitive. And so now we have high schools who are graduating kids who don't know their natural gifts and talents, who also don't know what it means to be in a competitive job market, especially when it talks about getting college educated.
And so here we are in 2023. And I was just listening to a podcast this morning. Now you got me going in a whole different direction because I'm also an extreme execution certified coach, which is making me think, man, I got to do more at the high school level because college is too late.
It is too late.
And so I was listening to a podcast this morning and it was just talking about, it was David Shands and he was having conversations with a guy who is a millionaire automation person on YouTube. And one of the things they said, when you are asking the average teenager what they want to do, 20 years ago, that may have been be a doctor or a lawyer or a firefighter or a police officer or whatever. Now it's content creation. It's a YouTuber. And so we live in such a different age to where you don't have to go down a traditional path. There's so many non-traditional type jobs out there. So how do we have that conversation with our high school students to figure out, number one, what is it that you're good at? What is it that is your calling? And then to help them to cultivate that calling, regardless of if it's following the traditional route or maybe going in a little bit of a non-traditional path.
Well, so let me take a couple of days back and say, like, it's actually not too late if you get to college age, right? It's not too late. You're 18 to 24-ish or whatever. It's not too late. It's still not too late. I mean, if you're in your 30s, it's still not too late.
Right. I'm in my 50s.
It's still not too late, right? It's still not too late.
Well, just to help them to achieve the calling sooner than waiting to, your tank is half empty.
And this is where I think people need to realize, like, your gift is not a professional job.
Great
right?
point.
Your gift is not a job title. That's not your gift, right? Your gift is being intellectual and using your love for facts and knowledge to become a researcher. right? Your gift is not being an event planner. Your gift is being a sociable person and being an expert at bringing people together. And you use that in the way of event planning, right? For weddings, for conferences, for, right? The gift is not the job title, right? And so, how do we get students to see their gifts? Is we help them understand who they are, right? Based on the decisions that they make in their own life, right? And I like to use assessments. That I use assessments and activities. That's what I do, right? And so I help my students see their leadership traits, their leadership styles, their leadership abilities, their behaviors, their skills, their strengths, their conflict styles, their vision, their understanding of their vision in their life, right? Their obstacles that they address, right? I help them see that and contextualize it in a way that can then unfold the story, right? Why is this obstacle the hardest obstacle for you? When you're creating a vision, do you see a picture or do you see words? Right? When you are developing your skill around something, are you conceptual or are you more interpersonal? Right? Like helping them see. So then they realize like, yo, I am a very interpersonal person. And so it probably is best for me to go into an industry where I can work with people on a daily basis. Right? That's going to bring me joy. And so now we need to figure out what industry that works with people do you want to pursue and learn more about, right? Because working with people, do you want to work with people's problems? No, I definitely don't want to work with people's problems. Okay, so we know social work, therapy, all out the door, right? you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's my approach, and I think we need abilities in education that help students do more of that. And then they'll start understanding who they are in industry. They'll understanding how their identities impact the industries that they are going into, right? Because don't matter how gifted and talented you are, you go into accounting, you know that is a male dominated field. And so if you're a woman, how you're going to show up in that space is going to look totally different, no matter how gifted and talented you are. Right? But that's later on. We don't need to talk about that in high school. We could talk about that in college. Right? We could talk about that in your professional career, right? We should be talking about that at the professional level. But of course, we have states, governors who are trying to get rid of those type of things.
Well, and then now I'm going to totally flip the switch on you, because when we were talking before we went live, you were telling me about your real estate portfolio. And, real estate is not one of those things that's really taught in, at the college level. And I am doing some things that hopefully teach it at the high school level, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. So
Nice.
how did your path cross with investing in real estate?
Yeah. My son, y'all met him, right? Little guy. Well, he's getting up there, right? He's getting up there in age. But when he was born, we were living in an apartment, and I brought him home, right? And we were, we were happy, but it was something off for me. And as I continued doing my own work, my own journey, I had to ask myself, I was like, wow, like I never lived in an apartment. My mom never, she always, if she was renting a house. And she eventually bought that house, and she still owns that house, that is the center of our family when everybody comes home now. I was like, I don't have that for my son right now.
Mm.
And so I pursued it hard. Again, I'm just the type of person, once I made my mind is made. And so I took out of my retirement, right? $5,000. This was pretty much all I could take. And I put it on a house, and I bought my first
Okay.
house, right? And I started realizing how much houses appreciate. And my house started appreciating, I was like, dang, can I get $5,000 to get another one to do this again? Right. And so I found some partners. And we tried to start a group that fell through. And so a couple people from small group from that group, we started our own thing. And that didn't go as well as I wanted it to go. Right. But I was like, I'm in. I bought some property. I own some property. And so I continued to learn and continue to network and got with another group. And I mean, we made some major investments, right? And still waiting on some payoff for some. But when you look at, paperwork that says you took a $45,000 loss for the year, right? I'm having different conversations now, right? Like my accountant is like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, y'all doing something, right? You figuring something out. And of course, this is group economics. So I thoroughly believe it would have been it might have paid off more money if I went at this alone, but it probably would have took me longer, right? And I wouldn't have been able to come up with the massive amount of money that I have been able to come up with to purchase some of these properties if I didn't have a group of people with me. Right. And so I know that at the end of the day, what's tried and true in this country is land ownership. It's tried and true. Ain't going nowhere. It ain't
They're not
going
making more.
It ain't getting cheaper either.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's what I love, and I want to ask you. And I know we got to wrap up, but okay, you said you got a group of people, and that didn't work out. So you look for another group of people, and that didn't work out. And then finally, that's not what happens. We try something one time, somebody does us wrong, and then we're like, oh, real estate is horrible. So I love that you were able to push through two sets of partners, I think is what I heard. So for our listeners, how do you look at you knew real estate was tried and true, and you're like, okay, this wasn't the right group of people, this wasn't the right group of people. How do you push through? Because that's one of the things I teach as well. Like, real estate is about solving problems, and it's about getting to the finish line. You knew you wanted to make a profit. You knew you could make a profit. You just got to go through and pivot and navigate until you get to where you're with the right people to make a profit. What was it in you that, and if you have a couple of steps that was, you know what, I'm still going to do this, even though these are not the right people I'm supposed to do this with?
Yeah, a lot of people are driven by instant gratification. Right. And so I put my money in, I'm waiting for my money to come back. It needs to come back right now. Right. And I know that's not how legacy is built. I mean, I've studied celebrity, right, life. Jay-Z is probably one of my favorite. I feel like I learned so much from him and his progress and fame. That you learn that legacies are not built overnight. And oftentimes those people don't have vision, right? Not just like a vision, but like vision for the future, right? So not like saying like a specific thing, but it's like, no, like I realize if I put this $1,000 here right now, that eventually it'll be something. I don't get to decide that.
Mm.
I think a part of that also is my spirituality, right? If you walk with God, then you know God answers in His time,
Mm.
right? And if you believe in faith, then you believe that the answer will come. But if you give up, you'll never get the answer,
Mm.
right? If
That
you,
part.
it'll never happen. That's one. So what they say, right? Winning is hard, but if you never try, you will always lose.
Oh, that's a bar. That's a bar.
It's the truth. And I'm trying to teach my son as well, because he loves winning. And he only likes to try when he knows he'll win.
Ooh.
And I'm trying to help him see that the opportunities that he's limiting himself in his own development is, you know, is gonna it could create a life lesson that he still needs to learn continuously through his life. Right? It's the same with all of us. You know, when things get hard and we quit, we never really fully realize the promise.
Mm.
You know, and you started because you believed there was a promise at the end. Right? We all start something because we believed that it was something going to happen. Doesn't matter if it's a marriage, a relationship, right? Fiance, boyfriend, girlfriend, or a investment, right? A business, a training program, a coaching program. We all start believing that when we finish, something is going to happen. Here's the reality. It's never over. The finish line is death.
Mm.
And so if the finish line is literally when you are incapable of keeping going, then you realize that you just need to keep trying.
Right. Yeah, that is so good. That is so good. Dara, this was amazing talking to you. So, two things. I want you to let the people know how they can continue to follow you, where your social media challenges, what you offer as far as coaching or your programs or whatever. And then leave us with, if we had to package up this whole conversation with just, one phrase of wisdom, what would that be? So let the people know how they can find you.
Yes. You can find me at www.doingthegoodwork.com. You can connect with me at info@doingthegoodwork.com. INFO at doingthegoodwork.com. You can also get a free resource from me at doingthegoodwork.com/free-resource, right? doingthegoodwork.com/free-resource. If you want to learn how to be an inclusive leadership trainer, right, and be the person that is the hero in somebody else's story, I would love to do that for you, right? I think the next thing is for me is if you want to grow, if you want to take anything from this, if you want to grow, you need to understand who you are, right? What are your natural gifts and talents? And how do you maximize those natural gifts and talents for the legacy that you want to build, right? And if you were looking for somebody who can help you understand you better, I'm definitely your guy.
Oh man, be the hero in somebody else's life. That was another bar. I hope you all love that. Oh my goodness. So thank you so much, Dar. I certainly enjoyed the conversation. I hope everybody else did. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
No, that was good. Thank you.